Welcome to the Educated Ignorance Podcast here on the For Frequency Sake Podcast Network. This is Conference Championship Week here on the Educated Ignorance Podcast. We are here. We are going to talk today about the Big Ten tournament. So let's get into it and let's not waste any time. Real quick, some housekeeping. Of course, like the video. Please share the video on whatever platform you're watching it on. Subscribe to us on Facebook or on YouTube and on TikTok for Frequency Sake on YouTube and for Fantasy Sake QC on TikTok. We are about to be blowing up with all of the content that you can imagine on those platforms here over the next few weeks, especially with the tournament right around the corner. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it and start with off the top. We can't start in the Big Ten without the overall number one seed in the Big Ten tournament, the Purdue Boilermakers, Big Ten regular season champs, third time in the last, I think, 8 years, I believe it was, that they've won the regular season Big Ten championship. The question here is, are they inevitable? Now, you could ask this. I don't think you can ask this clearly for a on a grand scale. When you look at the NCAA tournament, I think matchups in a sense will determine how far they go. Like if they run into a team with a bunch of pro guards, like if they ran into like a Kentucky in like the Sweet 16 or something, that could be a matchup that really gives them problems. But overall, I'm talking just about in this tournament because the Purdue has clearly been head and shoulders above everybody else in the Big Ten. And Illinois, who is second, has been head over the Big Ten, the rest of the Big Ten. Like they are clearly the two best teams in the conference. I think the only team that can really, I do think the top four seeds are clearly a bit of a cut above in a sense over the rest of this league. That's because I think the middle and the bottom parts of this league has really nosedive. We're going to talk here in a second about the bubble of this conference. You know who can potentially get in, and I think there's a great chance that this is a 6-bid league come next Sunday. We're recording this after the games on Sunday night. I went to the Illinois Iowa game in Iowa City. I had a fantastic time watching Illinois sweep the Hawkeyes. Listen, Purdue, though, that game against Illinois was super elite. I think there are a couple teams that could knock them off. But it's going to be tough. I personally do not feel that they are inevitable. I think they should be, though, heavy favorites. I think you have to have them the heavy favorites. They've shown it all season long in this conference, and I believe that Purdue, is going to they are going to, especially if they can dodge a couple of certain matchups, I think they're going to be fine. But personally, I don't know if they will. We'll see, though. We'll get to our predictions here in a little bit. But I think there's a couple other things that are more intriguing to talk about when it comes to this league. And what I think there's a bit of a more intriguing conversation to have when it comes to the Big Ten. And right now, at least in my opinion, is what teams can get into the NCAA tournament and what teams should get into the NCAA tournament. I think right now there are clearly four locks. And I think anybody who tries to say there are either less or more, in my opinion, are besides themselves. Beside themselves. I clearly believe, obviously, Purdue's going to be a 1 seed. They could lose their first game to Minnesota or Michigan State, and they'll still be a 1 seed. The question right now is, are they going to be the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament? I think there's a chance where if they win this tournament, I think there's a good chance. Their numbers when it comes to who they beaten this year is pretty remarkable. I would have UConn, but I think Purdue is absolutely deserving of the top seed. Regardless, clearly Illinois, they'll probably be on the 4 line depending if certain teams lose. Like I don't think they can drop below the 4 line. I think if they win the tournament, they can move up to the 3. if some other teams in front of them potentially on the seed line lose, like an Iowa State goes one and done, Creighton goes one and done, stuff like that in the Big East SEC. Did I say whatever tournaments around the country this week? They need stuff like that to happen in order for them to have a chance to move up. And then the other two, of course, Nebraska. Shout out to Fred Hoiberg. I think he's the only guy that should get the Big Ten Coach of the Year over Brad Underwood. I think Hoiberg's done an amazing job, and I think what they have been able to do this season has been phenomenal. They'll probably be they'll be somewhere between the 8 to 10 line. Same for Northwestern. Both of those teams have had fantastic years. I think both of those are locks. After that, well, okay. Wisconsin as well. So 5 locks. I think Wisconsin's a tournament team. They would need a bunch of bid thieves to kind of knock them out, including them like losing to Maryland or Rutgers in their first game, in the tournament. Outside of that, I think Wisconsin, they're a lock. They have some good wins earlier in the season. They are metrics merchants just as much as like Michigan State is, which we'll talk about Michigan State here in a second. But outside of those 5, I think that could be it. I think it's a struggle from there on. And I think either teams need to at least win one game, or they need to win a game and get some help. The 2 teams that are the closest on the bubble, in my opinion, is Michigan State and Iowa. I think those are the teams that are the closest to the bubble right now when it comes to the NCAA tournament. I clearly am smoking rock when it comes to Michigan State because everybody and their dad is just saying they're a lock to make the NCAA tournament. I don't believe so. I think this team, the way they have struggled down the stretch, is insane. And people are just glad handing them into the NCAA tournament like it's their birthright. It's insane to me. This team, listen, I know Indiana's played well, but this team lost to Indiana today. Again, I'm recording this Sunday night. They lost at home to Ohio State, at home to Iowa. Yes, and they lost at Minnesota. I understand the Illinois win they had in mid-February. It carries a lot of water outside until you actually, beating Illinois is cool until you actually talk about Illinois, and then apparently they're sucked. Illinois is the most disrespected team in the country, but what do I know? I'm just a homer. They went to Wisconsin and lost by 15. They lost by 14 at Northwestern. I understand that they have some wins that are good. They beat Illinois at home. They beat the brakes off of Baylor in December. But dude, and the Indiana State win looks pretty damn good now. They lost at home to James Madison, who I know has won 30 games and might make the NCAA tournament, but they just I feel like a 18-13 Michigan State team. If they lose to Minnesota, they're done. I don't care. We have too many good mid-major schools that are out there than to potentially put in an 18-13 Michigan, potentially 18-13, 19-14 Michigan State team over a team like an Indiana State who lost in their conference tournament final today. There are other teams that are out there that are more deserving than Michigan State to make the tournament. And they're not even projected first 4 on bracketologist predictions. It's fucking bananas to me. Before Michigan State lost today, Jerry Palm had them, I believe, a 9 seed. I'm trying to scroll. Yeah, he had them as a 9 seed, which is safely in the field. It's insane to me that they are New Mexico deserves to be in over them, and New Mexico's toeing the line. I understand that the bubble is kind of jumbled up, but the Michigan State stuff to me is baffling. Iowa is next. Iowa, in my opinion, isn't getting the respect they deserve when it comes to the bubble. They've got some now listen, if Iowa misses the tournament, there are going to be about 4 games this season, that they're going to look at and be like, Jesus, if we would have had those, we would be in. Both Maryland games, they absolutely fumbled down the stretch. They were up big, especially the game at Maryland. They were up like 10 halfway through the second half, and they shit themselves and lost the game. They I know it was early in the year, and it was when Owen Freeman had his first start. But they lost by 10 at home to Michigan. Again, I know that was their first Big Ten game. That was all the way back on December, or that was their second Big Ten game. I understand that was all the way back on December 10th. But man, that is not, when you really think about it, that is not a good loss considering Michigan this year has been a disaster. They're one of the worst time major teams in the country. They led at Indiana with a minute left and lost by 6. Of course, we mentioned the other Iowa or Maryland game. They were up double. They were up 10 in the second half and lost by 12. The worst, another bad one too, is again they were up double digits and ended up losing by 10. Is the Penn State game? They lose at Penn State. Those are just some games that are really, really gonna kick them. They're the best teams that they played that they've lost to in the second half of the season here. They got swept by Illinois, and Illinois is just better than them. I think if Iowa plays them in the quarters, I think Iowa could hang with them or even beat them. It's hard to beat a team 3 times, but Illinois is just better. They kind of have the same style of play, and Illinois just has better players. That's at the end of the day, that's just kind of what it is. Illinois has pros, and Iowa, the only pro, they have 2 potential pros, and one of them is a spot up shooter, and the other is a freshman right now in Owen Freeman. So, but listen, they beat Ohio State. That's a good win. They won at Michigan State. They beat Wisconsin at home. Those are some good wins. They won at Northwestern. So they've done the job to get to the finish line. But they're in a spot right now where they have to, I think, get to the semifinals, and then they need some help. Bid Steelers, if there are bid stealers out there, Iowa is in trouble. If Syracuse wins the ACC, or if freaking Villanova wins the Big East, which I don't think any of these things are going to happen. I'm just mentioning stuff. Or the Mountain West, in my opinion, is going to be a 6-bid league. But say UNLV wins the Mountain West, who is the 4th seed in the Mountain West tournament, but I don't think they're going to make the tournament unless they win the Mountain West tournament. Then that's going to be a 7-bid league for the Mountain West potentially, and I like that. Teams like Iowa, Michigan State are screwed. Outside of that, I don't think there's any other teams in the bubble. I think this is a 6-bid league at most. I don't think Indiana or Ohio State, I don't think they really have a shot. They need a lot of help in my mind. Minnesota as well. I think people are losing their brains when they're talking about some of these teams that have a chance in the Big Ten. But I think Iowa and Michigan State are the teams that are the closest to the bubble that need to handle business in a sense and win multiple games in order to have a shot come Selection Sunday. All right, prediction time. We're down to the wire. It is time for predictions for the Big Ten tournament. Let's start with who we have getting to the semifinals. Of course, I think Purdue makes it to the semifinals. If they don't, if they lost to Michigan State or Minnesota, I personally would be floored. I think Northwestern gets to the semifinals. I just think they match up well, especially if they get Wisconsin, which if chalk holds, I feel that will be a matchup that they will be able to handle. So I pick Northwestern to make the semis. Then I have, of course, my Illinois Fighting Illini. I understand that everyone and their dad is going to pick Iowa or Ohio State to beat them in the quarters. I think Illinois is going to do it. I think they're too tough of a challenge. I think Iowa could, but I watched in person how well Illinois guarded them. Now, listen, it'll be tough to do it again. Tony Perkins, who got some great cardio in the game in Iowa City, he will be much better. He will score way more than 2 points if they play Illinois again. I guarantee that. But I just think those two teams, the way it is, I just think Illinois is better. This version of them, they're just better than Iowa, and I think they'll beat them. And then I have Nebraska making the semis. So I do have chalk holding here as we get to the semifinals. But then things definitely get a little bit interesting. I think Illinois will beat Nebraska. Again, I just think Illinois matches up too well. And this isn't me being a homer or whatnot. But listen, I think Illinois is the most disrespected team in the country. I don't understand why people just Illinois is the same metrics type of team as Miami was last year, and Miami went to the Final Four. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just pointing that out. No, Illinois is the same type of team as Kentucky. They are both insanely high-powered offenses with sketchy defenses. But hey, guess what? Here's the difference in Illinois and Kentucky. Illinois is like in the like bottom. They're like in the middle of the pack on defense. They're like 90s. Kentucky's in the 300s. So listen, man, if Illinois was colored blue and they had a UK on their chest instead of orange and blue, everybody would love them. But instead, it's Illinois, and they're the redheaded stepchild of not only the Big Ten, but the redheaded stepchild of NCAA basketball. It's weird to me. I think they'll beat Nebraska. And then I think Northwestern will upset Purdue. They got them the first time. Purdue needed like a 50-10 free throw discrepancy to beat Northwestern at Mackey Arena in the second game. I understand that they're missing Ty Berry, but Northwestern is reeling a little bit. But I think Northwestern is primed to be successful in this spot. Boo Buie is a guy who you can hop on his back and they can go for a big ride. So I picked Northwestern to beat Purdue. And as much as I think Illinois and Purdue have been the two best teams in the Big Ten all season long, and I think it would be fitting if they have a third matchup to determine the ultimate Big Ten ruler of the universe, I think Northwestern upsets Purdue, and I think Northwestern's going to win the Big Ten tournament. I think they're going to knock off Illinois. They are a bit of a tough matchup. I think that the one thing as an Illinois fan that scares me is teams that have guards that are legitimate. Boo Buie is a savage. He's had an amazing year. And I think Northwestern, Chris Collins, I think they are going to win the Big Ten tournament. So Purdue and Northwestern, Illinois and Nebraska, and then Purdue upset by Northwestern. Illinois beats Nebraska. And I think Northwestern, led by Boo Buie, Barnheiser, Coach Collins, they win the Big Ten tournament, and they punch their ticket, even though I think it's already punched, to the NCAA tournament. That is the Big Ten tournament preview. Stay with us. We're going to have more conference tournament fun. We're going to be breaking down some of the biggest current conference tournaments, SEC, Big 12, Big East, and a couple others. And then we're going to talk even some big mid-major love. Make sure you stay tuned with us here on the Educated Ignorance podcast. Remember, if you ain't got your game, you best pass the sticks. This has been the Big Ten Tournament Preview. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.